mode.
Hello and welcome to the Center for Fostering Success Best Practice Best Fit webinar series. Our mission is to improve college graduation and career achievement rates among youth and young adults ages 12 to 25 years old who are aging out of the foster care system. We would like to acknowledge our funders, the Tri-C Foundation, the Havermill Foundation, and Western Michigan University for making this webinar possible. We are excited to bring you this webinar series called Best Practice, Best Fit, which focuses on providing helping professionals, students, and supportive adults discovery-driven solutions related to educational attainment for students in foster care. Before I get started, I want to mention study literature and a recording of this webinar will be available on our website following the broadcast. Also, if you feel you have any ideas or a study you feel would fit our series, please contact us at fosteringinfo@wmich.edu. This email will be provided following the webinar. Today, we are pleased to welcome Dr. Monique Mitchell, who will be presenting our webinar, Writing My Success Story, Young Adult Experiences as They Pursue Higher Education. As a note, my name is Maddie Day, and I'm the Director of Outreach and Training. We will be taking questions on our side throughout the webinar, so if you have questions for Dr. Monique Mitchell, feel free to enter those in the questions bar on your side control panel, and we will answer those at the end of the webinar. And now to introduce Dr. Monique Mitchell. Dr. Mitchell is a Research Assistant Professor at the Center for Child and Family Studies in the College of Social Work at the University of South Carolina. She is the University of South Carolina Research Director for the National Youth in Transition Database, or NYTD, for federal data collection. Her research specialties include the lived experience of children and youth in foster care, life transitions, ambiguities, grief and loss, social support, spirituality, and youth empowerment. Her specific expertise involves informing programming and policy, using child-centered research, providing consultation to invested parties in child welfare, and designing and developing youth workshops, resource kits, and learning programs that serve children and youth in foster care. And now we welcome Dr. Monique Mitchell.
Well, hello. Thank you very much for the introduction, Maddie. I'm excited to be here with you all today. I'm going to be talking about writing my success story. And what we're going to do today is, first I'm going to introduce the research study that I'm working on with my team, which is Voices and Visions of Youth in Transition, and then give you just a general background to some of the outcomes we're learning about here in South Carolina for youth and young adults transitioning out of the foster care system. And then I'll be introducing you to our authors of success, Goal&S United Youth Voice, and discussing the higher education continuum and using adults' experiences to highlight this particular continuum. And last but certainly not least, we'll be talking about how we can support success stories for not only youth in South Carolina, but youth across the country. Voices and Visions of Youth in Transition is a longitudinal mixed methods transformative research study, and it examines the outcomes and experiences of youth and young adults as they transition out of foster care. Our participants are 17, 19, and 21, so we surveyed them at 17, then again at 19 and at 21. And at 17 we had 294 17-year-olds that we surveyed, and then at 19 we surveyed 223, so we had a pretty good retention rate. And what I'm going to do today is focus on the 19-year-old findings for our youth as they transition out of foster care here in South Carolina. So what did we find at the age of 19? Well, unfortunately, 1 in 4 had experienced homelessness within 2 years of their 17th birthday. And less than half of our youth were employed. 43% of young adults had completed their GED or high school. 20% of young adults were enrolled in an institution of higher education, and 81% of young adults had accomplished 1 or more of their personal goals within 2 years. And when you look at these outcomes, What comes to mind is, why aren't more of our youth graduating from high school or their GED? And that's something that we definitely want to improve in South Carolina. And so my mind went to, well, 1 in 5 are enrolled in an institution of higher education, and a number of our youth who are on our state youth advisory boards are authors of success. And so naturally, I decided to then consult with our 2 state youth advisory boards to ask them about what works, what does not work, and what would have worked well as they pursued higher education. The pursuit of higher education. The first group that I consulted with is Go Out and Learn Life. And this is our State Youth Advisory Board for the South Carolina Department of Social Services. And our members range from 16 to 21 years old. And the reason why I have 22 on the screen is because some of our young adults will then mentor our younger ones. And so 22-year-old members are actually mentors on goal. And their responsibility is to provide consultation, training, and curriculum development to enhance the programs and policies affecting youth in the South Carolina foster care system. I also consulted with SC United Youth Voice, and this is our state youth advisory panel for the National Youth and Transition Database and the Voices and Visions Research Study. And our members are youth and young adults who are 17 to 23 years old. And their primary responsibility is to provide consultation on research questions, methods, and findings related to the experiences and outcomes of youth transitioning out of the South Carolina foster care system. They also assist with resource development and the dissemination of findings to youth and adult audiences. So as we move forward and we think about authors of success, I just want to take a moment to introduce you to 2 of our authors. We're going to go back. I'm sorry I'm having a difficult time, but I'm not moving forward until we hear from him.
My name is Josh, and I'm writing my success story.
Great. So that's Tracy and Josh. Tracy is a member on SC United Youth Voice, and Josh is our mentor on Goal. So when we think about the pursuit of higher education, for me particularly, it's not a one-time phenomenon. There's different phases that contribute to this continuum. The first phase is considering higher education. We have to think about, do I even want to pursue higher education? And with that has its own questions, its own challenges, its own supports that are needed. Now let's say that one of our young adults decides, yes, I absolutely do want to pursue and consider it, and I'm going to accept it. Then they need to actually start it. So what happens when a young adult is beginning their higher education? What challenges do they experience? And what resources do they need? So after we begin higher education, the next challenge is then, well, do I continue it? We run into different obstacles and different barriers, and so we really want to know what our young adults have to say about what helps them to decide to stay in their higher education institution. And last, but certainly not least, what do I need to do to actually complete my higher education? And so it's these 4 particular phases that we're going to be focusing on today in our webinar. There's 4 major themes that emerged from the responses of our young adults, and these are the main themes that I'll be focusing on today, which is needed supports, barriers and challenges, overcoming obstacles, and this was really, just really prominent in their responses, the importance of relational support. At this moment, I just want to ask, for those of you who are listening, if you don't have a paper and pen on hand or something to write with, if you could please just search around your desk and find something to take note. Because as I move through this webinar, I would really encourage you to listen to the experiences of these young adults and to think about which of these experiences are impacted by your work and what you do, and how changes can be made on your end to help them write their success stories. And we're going to start with the first phase, considering higher education. I was always told that college is the way to success. When asked about having to make the decision as to whether or not they were going to pursue higher education in terms of applying for their higher education. The two biggest supports that our young adults said that they needed were financial support and relational support. And I just want to draw attention to the subheaders there, the emotional support, the experiential support, and the vocal support. And for those qualitative researchers out there, these are our children codes, as you know. So the relational support is really about having somebody in your life that you can go to. But I'd like to argue that relational support can be further subdivided. As I listen to the voices of youth and young adults, I hear them talk about very specific types of relational support. Emotional support is support that you're just being there for the young adult. You're just listening. You're just providing that emotional outlet. Experiential support is someone who actually has experience in what it is that the young adult needs help with, that they can speak to. And the other is vocal support. And this actually emerged, and it was coined, this term is actually coined by one of our advisors on the youth advisory panel, and he said it's vocal support that we need. And what he means by that, and I think this is just brilliant, is that it's the words of encouragement, somebody actually vocally saying, I believe in you, you can do this. And that's more than just being present. So let's take a look at what our young adults had to say about these. I needed to tell someone my fears and anxieties about heading to a new place with new surroundings and new people. As I mentioned before, this emotional support, what this young lady is asking for is someone just to be an ear. And I find that sometimes when people think of support, they think about what they can offer in terms of tangible things. And not every young adult needs somebody to have experience in what it is they need support with. For example, if a young adult says, well, I want to be a astronaut, and the individual who's listening might be like, I have absolutely nothing to contribute here. I have no idea how to be an astronaut. Let's just pretend the person on the receiving end is not an astronaut. Then what would happen is they may say, well, I can't really support you. But as you can see in this example, this young woman is saying, I don't need you to know how to be an astronaut. All I need you to do is listen to my fears and anxieties about this. And so we can provide support in multitude of ways. Now in this next slide, this is an example of experiential support. I just needed someone to help me ensure my major and make sure my school choices have a good program for my major. In this particular situation, yes, the young adult is specifically looking for someone who can review what his decisions are and make an informed response to him, someone who has had experience to say yes or no as to whether this major is in his or her best interest. I've observed that every child needs some kind of support or support system to strive for a higher education. I myself needed financial and vocal support to embark on my own college career. I may have had the drive and the will to strive for a higher education, but didn't exactly have all the means. That could be devastating or motivating to an individual in this predicament. I kept my head up and searched for every possible resource available to me. The financial support was necessary to ensure that my education could be paid for, although it was the vocal support that proved to become far more vital. Vocal support can be teachers, friends, or family members encouraging you along the way, essentially keeping you on the right track or by helping you discover resources that may be necessary. One thing is for certain, support will be necessary when striving for a higher education. And so again, you can read between the lines that this young man is talking about really having someone believe in him, in addition, of course, to the financial. In school, I was always labeled a problem child from pre-K all the way up to my senior year in high school. Being that I was this problem child, no one really talked to me about secondary education until I brought it to their attention. They would stop what they were doing just to look me in the face to see if I was joking, and then they would give me the I see success in you speech. I knew as they were trying to convince me, they were also trying to convince themselves. Not everyone was like this, just the people who got paid to help me. And again, as I read between the lines here, what I'm hearing this young woman say is she needed vocal support. She needed someone who believed in her. And someone, when they say, I see success in you, truly believed that she was competent and capable. And as I know her personally, she absolutely is. She's a wonderful and brilliant young woman. So when we think about considering higher education, these are the barriers and challenges our young adults discussed. Completing scholarship applications and essays, deciding which post-secondary institution to choose, time management, fear of failure, a lack of belief in personal potential, financial barriers, transportation, lack of employment, and housing during the summer months. And what I ask you to do as you look at this list, if there's anything on there that you see that you are responsible for or have any influence over, that you think, oh, I could absolutely help somebody learn how to time manage, or I'm in the housing program, I could be considering these things. Please do make note of it, because this is really what these webinars are for, to raise discussion, to start thinking about things and figuring out solutions to help our young adults. So let's take a look at these challenges. Another barrier that I encountered was not feeling like I had a place to stay during the breaks from school when the campus dorms were closed. As I was about to age out of foster care, it wasn't like I could call my case manager and say, can you find me a temporary home to stay in for the holidays? And I'd like to pause here for this particular quote, something that I can relate with personally. Because I don't think, at least here in South Carolina, we pay enough attention to the experience of homelessness that our students are experiencing during the summer months or during the holiday breaks. I know from personal experience that when I transitioned out of care, I had to give up my apartment. I moved 2 hours away to go to university. In my first year of university, I lived on residence. I had, in my high school, I'd been in a bad neighborhood, and I was afraid when I went to the new city that I might get an apartment in a bad neighborhood. So I said, okay, I'm going to live in residence, and I'm going to get to know the city and determine where I need to move from there. So at the end of the school year, I saw everybody packing and getting ready to go somewhere, I guess, and the dorm manager came up to me and she said, Monique, why aren't you packing? And I said, oh, well, I'm not going anywhere. I'm actually staying. I'll be here in September. School starts back in September. I thought it was the oddest question. And she said to me, well, you have to pack. And I said, well, what do you mean I have to? She said, well, you have to leave. And I said, well, I can't leave. She said, well, you'd go home like everybody else. And I said, well, this is my home. I don't have somewhere to go to. And literally, I was homeless. In that moment, I realized she wasn't kidding. Nobody had prepared me for the fact that school doesn't allow you to stay in residence for the summer months. And I mean, it was my university, and I know other universities have different opportunities, but mine certainly didn't allow me to. And no one on the administrative side even thought about the fact that there could be students at their institution who would become homeless when housing wasn't provided during the summer months. And so fortunately, I had a wonderful boss when I was in high school who helped me find housing and a job. I had to move again back to my original city and then back to my school, but not all young adults are in that privileged position. I'm very fortunate I had that connection. Being that I was this problem child seeking secondary education who got suspended every year from 7th to the 11th grade, and my GPA stood at 1.2, they said I should start at a tech school. My response was, would you tell your kids that? My administrator was like, it is going to be really hard for you to get into a university. I said, if I don't get into a university, then college is not meant for me. And what I'd like to draw your attention to here, and I say vocal challenges because, again, what this young woman needed to hear was somebody believed in her. And I certainly do understand that there was probably some truth to saying at a 1.2 you might not be able to get into certain universities or colleges. But what this individual completely overlooked is that she is very intelligent, and what she did is she ended up going to summer school and raising her GPA and getting accepted into a university. So what she needed was someone to believe in her and say, okay, look, this is where you're at. You're at a 1.2. If you want to do this, here are the steps that you need to take to make it happen. That vocal support is so important, and you don't have to be a young adult with foster care experience to be able to resonate with that. I think anybody, knows how important it is to have somebody believe in them. So here's how we can help support our young adults as they're considering higher education. This could be the make or break between whether they choose or do not choose to pursue higher education. Support with transportation school applications. My caseworker and Urban League helped me by taking me to the places I needed to go and helped me get information I needed and even helped me fill out the paperwork for college. Sometimes it's just the little things, and they're big things to somebody else. So maybe you don't have time to help with housing or something else, but you might be willing to help somebody with filling out their paperwork, just so that they can have someone, again, who can look it over and say, oh, you know, you missed this, or you need to maybe elaborate here, or here's something you can say in your entry exam. Support with school selection is another one. A staff at my group home was helpful because she talked to me about the benefits of the school I wanted to attend, and she helped me choose my school. So again, having somebody there to look them over and say, hey, okay, so this is the program you want to pursue. Well, you know, this particular school has a really good program. Do you want to consider going there? Because if you go to this school, well, you might not have all those benefits. So it's really helpful for them to have somebody they can speak to and make these decisions. Again, like I said, there may be young adults out there who just did not have this basic level of support and just decided they're not even going to commence higher education. Everyone supported the idea of me going to college, but very few people helped. I was in my placement for about 2 years with people I consider as family, but I got all my help from outsiders, which was my teachers from high school. My school sent off all my paperwork for college. I was accepted to a university which ranks within the top 10 historically black colleges and universities in the country, so helping with application submission. Support with self-confidence. My last foster parent was very supportive of me furthering my education. She encouraged me to maintain my GPA and always told me that with a degree, all things are possible. Those are probably the best words that she could have told me, as those words stuck with me when I transferred from a technical school to a 4-year degree institution. She had faith that I would be able to make it, and that if I believed in myself, that I could achieve whatever my mind and heart was set on. Again, we see that vocal support. So now we're going to move on to commencing higher education. As our young adults have decided, okay, I'm going to do this, what are some of the challenges that they experienced when they started post-secondary school? So they said they needed assistance with schoolwork and assignments. And again, if you're taking notes, please do take a look at the slide and determine if there's anything that you could help as a needed support. Assistance with getting school supplies and books. Assistance with move-in day. Financial assistance, social and emotional support, reliable transportation, and orientation support. So let's take a look at those. I didn't really have the supports that I needed when I started college. Not really. It seems like I was on my own going into my first year in college, but there was help if I desired. I needed monetary support, reliable transportation, and emotional support. To be honest, I really did not have any of these supports once I moved away for school. I just aged out of care, and because my case manager rarely spoke to me, it was as if she didn't care. My foster parents, although they were a phone call away, seems as if they never really answered the phone when I called. It was up to me to find ways. Maddie, stop playing with that over there. Just kidding. It was up to me.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. This is Carrie. I'm the intern, and somebody was making a lot of noise, and I was trying to mute it, but I'm having trouble. So go ahead. Can you see it now? Are you?
I can. Can you hear me?
You can. Yes. You can go right ahead, and
Okay. Okay. This is fun. It makes sure everyone's awake and paying attention. Okay, so it was up to me to find ways to manage my time, find people who had vehicles, and be able to support and search for scholarships on my own. When I started university, my caseworker had a transporter drop me off. Everyone was with their families. I moved everything I owned in my dorm by myself with no help. I didn't know how to take care of my financial aid. My financial aid counselor couldn't believe that my caseworker did not come up there with me. She walked me through it. You know, I've read this slide countless times, and every time I read it, it brings tears to my eyes. And I'm not just saying that to be dramatic. I just don't understand how this young person is moving into a dorm and just watching all these other families moving in, you know, their children, and she just didn't have anyone there to help. And I would really like to see these realities change for our young adults with foster care experience who may not have that same support system. And how do we go about doing that? There's lots of different ways. We can be creative without, you know, pinpointing and putting up a poster that says, hey, if you've got foster care experience, you know, we can help. I mean, that's not the way to do it, but there's certainly ways to create programs so that no student, regardless if they're in foster care or not, or have foster care experience, ever feels like they have to be alone on what should be one of the most amazing and celebratory days of their lives when they get to move in to their dorm for, you know, to start their their career and their educational career. So I asked the young adults how ready were they to start higher education. And some of them believed they were prepared for higher education, whereas others believed they would have appreciated more preparation skills, so learning time management prior to commencing higher education. Yes, I felt prepared for university a bit more than others since I had the experience of depending more on myself and knowing the pros and cons of my actions. I was semi-prepared for college. I was ready to explore and discover another world I have never been. I wasn't prepared to see the difference in high school and college. And what I find very interesting about this response is that little nuance to see the difference in high school and college. And there really is, for those of us who have gone to college, we know there's a huge difference between high school and college. So how do we help our young adults really be prepared to say, okay, so here are the differences that you're going to see, and to be prepared for that, because sometimes it can be a big shocker. Yes, I felt like I was prepared. I thought that I was independent and responsible enough for college. No, because I was on my own and I would have to manage money and time all by myself. But it was something to get used to, and it's part of the college transition. I felt that I had been pushed out of the door. When I say this, I mean that I had just aged out of care, and in order for me not to become a statistic of the homeless population, I had to make a choice. Either be homeless or go to a university that allowed on-campus housing. Again, we're seeing that theme. I was not really prepared to live in a dorm with 5 other girls, nor was I ready to have a large school workload and still try to figure out how I was going to manage life on my own as an adult. So let's take a look at continuing. So I've started higher education. Am I going to stay there? Well, here are some of the obstacles our young adults experience: surviving finals, navigating professional relationships, staying organized, time management again, work, school-life balance, financial stress, course materials, roommate drama, and transportation dilemmas. I had a very challenging English teacher who would always grade my papers no higher than a 65 and no lower than a 60. I didn't understand why I used to do so poorly in his class, so I privately talked to him. Although I tried doing every detail he wanted on his papers, nothing satisfied him. So I put other classes off to try to do better in his. When finals came, I needed a 75 on my paper to pass his class, and I made a 70. Therefore, I failed. He came to me and said, "It's not that I don't like you, it's that I see a lot in you. I just want you to be better." Working a full-time job while being in school full-time to pay bills. I was kind of in a panic because I didn't have time for schoolwork because I was at work too much. But I talked to management and they tried to work with my schedule. It had gotten better. I think one of the things we need to really pay attention to the reality for many of our young adults with foster care experience is that they are going to school full-time and they are carrying a full-time job to pay their expenses, and so there is little to no time to do their schoolwork. When I was in high school, I would get up, go to school. I think my classes started at 8 or 8:30. I finished at 2:30 or 3 o'clock. I had to be at work for 3:30. I worked till 11 o'clock. I didn't get home by the bus till midnight, and then I'm expected to do schoolwork. And I mean, really, when you think about that, it puts our youth, you know, at a disadvantage in many ways because they're really just trying to keep a roof over their heads, but in order to do that, they need to have a job, and usually a part-time job is just not going to be sufficient. I went through 11 courses without books or computer because my caseload kept being switched. I was too ashamed to ask my peers to borrow their books. I actually just finished my whole freshman year without books. My high school teachers tried to help me, but I felt like it was not their job to help. Hopefully, my sophomore year I'll have textbooks. Now, I know this is an extreme case, but I also know that this was this young woman's experience, and you can see that she doesn't really want to speak to anyone and ask them, hey, can I borrow your books? And I'm sure she didn't want to have to explain why she didn't have money to pay for her books. And I know, as a faculty member, that certainly we can put a book on course reserve at the library, and our students can access it that way. There's also probably other ways that we can have donation of books, but how do we get the information out to our students who are in need, and what can we do to better let them know that these programs are available to them? And again, hopefully that's not going to be the case, but in situations like this, when there is no money to pay for your school supplies, then how are you going to get good grades when you can't read the course materials? My first semester, I was living in a dorm room with 5 other females. They did not like me, and they were party people. I could not get any studying done, nor could I focus on sleep when they were always coming in late at night or early in the morning. My grades began to drop, and I was running out of money. I didn't have a meal plan as it was too expensive and I needed a job. The problem was that I didn't have a car and I didn't have any money. I was extremely stressed, so I went to the wellness center on campus. They have counselors that can talk to you and try to help resolve the issues. Needless to say, talking to the counselor was the best thing that I could have done. I was able to talk to him about getting some sort of meal plan, one that was less expensive, and a staff member offered to help me find reliable transportation to and from work if I got a job. I was less stressed after that. I was able to find a job, get a meal plan, and was able to have friends take me to and from work when I needed it. Well, another thing we need to think about as post-secondary institutional helpers is that this young lady is on campus and she does not have the money for a meal plan. And what do we usually say? Well, make meals at home and, try and save money, don't eat out. Well, she wasn't in a position to make meals at home because she probably didn't have a fridge or a stove or microwave. And so what exactly is she meant to do when meal plans can be I remember when I was in my first year, I was in the exact same predicament as her. I couldn't afford the meal plan. So fortunately, she did what is best and asked for help, which a lot of our young adults don't want to do because, they don't want to be pitied. They don't want people to feel sorry for them, and I completely get that. But we do need to ask for help regardless of our situation because people are there hopefully to help us. And by doing so, she was able to resolve this obstacle and found a meal plan that was less expensive, affordable, and through the help of a staff member, which was lovely, was able to find transportation so that she could get this job and bring in some finances. Family members, friends, colleagues, guidance counselors, student housing staff, these are all individuals that our young adults indicated have really been helpful to provide them with relational support in terms of continuing their higher education, not giving up, and moving forward. My aunt, who just finished her bachelor's and I think that's an error, I apologize, who is working on her master's, helped out on study habits and tips. And so this young man is talking about, again, that experiential support, somebody who's been there who can help him out with study habits and tips. The guidance counselors at the Student Wellness Center were very helpful in my stressful transition from high school and into college. They were always there and were willing to be the person that I vent to or the person to which I turned to ask for advice. Another person was the student housing staff in my RA. They were always willing to listen and lend an ear. And so you can see that our young adults as students are very appreciative of this relational support that they can receive from guidance counselors or their RAs or housing staff. And so, for those of you out there who are listening to this webinar, I really encourage you to think about, if you don't have programs at your institution, how can you help to reach out to help these young people, because they're extremely appreciative and all they really want is someone to just help them out so they can be successful and write their success stories. I go to people who are around me and know what they're doing. I try to aim at the ones who are doing something for themselves or have had experience that affiliates with whatever. And again, so that's the experiential support under relational support. If I need advice or support about my education, I can go to the Goal Liaison. She helps me if I need money for education or what I need to do to get other services besides for financial purposes. Actually, there were several people. I would feel really bad just to pinpoint one out of the whole bunch. My support team works like a team in an unknown way. My high school administrator, she is always there to help when I need something. So what I'd like to draw your attention to here is that this young lady is in college and she goes still back to her high school administrator who's kept that permanent connection with her. So thinking about, as we want to support our young adults, you might not necessarily be in post-secondary educational system, but if you are somebody that can still provide the support regardless of where you're at, that's really what our young adults need. We need people in the system and we need people outside of the system working as a community to be that level of support. I have many people in my life that I turn to for support. My parents, friends, family members, mentors, and my scholarship team. I love that, her scholarship team. I know that if I am worried about something, I'm able to pick up the phone and call any of them, and they will be more than happy to rationalize the situation and hopefully help me find a solution. One of my biggest concerns was finances, and one specific scholarship team has helped me out monetary-wise in more ways than I can count. I cannot say how much having them on my side and as a part of my team has helped and encouraged me to continue pushing through even in the hard times. Another support has been my parents. Having them to encourage and support me is amazing. I know that I can always call or send a text or email and they are there. No questions asked. It's a love that I couldn't do without. Never underestimate the power of relational support, I gotta tell you. So those were the things that were the obstacles for our young adults and the things that worked well for them to say, hey, I'm going to stay in school. So what about completing higher education? What did they say were the things that they needed most to say, I'm going to see this through? Relational support, again, and financial support. I have more peers that work as hard as I do to keep my focus great and on point. I have no money to attend school. I know that emotional and financial support are my biggest challenges as I finish up with my degree. The biggest concern that I have with graduating is not being able to find a place to live when May rolls around. I'm scared that I will be in the same boat as I was when I first started undergraduate school. If I was able to think of one thing that I would like to have, that would be it. Knowing that I have a place to live, a place to move to when I graduate that is affordable and in a safe neighborhood. If you think about this, just take a second to pause and really listen to this young woman's story. She's not, when you graduate from undergraduate, you should be thinking about your plans and what you want to do and the career that you're going to pursue or maybe starting a family or whatever it is. And what is she thinking? The one thing she wants is a roof over her head in an affordable and safe neighborhood. This is the reality that a lot of our young people are faced with. I just need a roof over my head. I mean, the very basic. So what can we do to help our young adults really know how to create the resources, hopefully, while they're in school so that they're set for when they step out the door? But I will tell you that the sad reality is that sometimes no matter what you do, you still face that. I personally experienced that. I had scholarships throughout my education, which helped, pay for my bills, and I had a graduate assistantship, and as long as I was a student, I had that financial, assistance coming in. And when I graduated from my PhD program, I was homeless. Again, thank God for having a really good friend and a partner who was willing to, house me for a while. What I'm saying is that this housing issue is something that can constantly, like the waves in the water, keep suffocating individuals because they need to know that they're safe and have a roof over their head in order to be good at a job or to be healthy in a relationship or to do well in school. People need to feel safe, and this is really, we need to help our youth feel that way in order for them to complete higher education and then write their success stories beyond that. So how do we support success stories here in South Carolina? Things that we need to consider is early move-in programs, having academic mentors, again, mentors for specific areas for experiential support, financial mentors. We really need to be honing in on this holiday and summer residency. We do not need our students sleeping in cars or being homeless or not returning to school because they had nowhere to sleep. Peer support programs, transition coaches. These are just a few of the things that we really need to be doing a much better job here in this state to help our young adults. Early move-in programs simply are giving the opportunity for our young adults to move in a little bit earlier than the rest of their cohort to get acclimated and to meet with administrators and let them know that you're there to support them. So what I'm saying on this slide is not new. The good news is we don't have to create a wheel that's already been invented. There are numerous colleges, universities, and post-secondary institutions across the country that are doing these very things. I've just selected a couple and put them on this slide. So for those of you who are interested and say, well, how do we do this? Reach out to other post-secondary institutions that are doing this. Ask them for their advice. Ask them what were some of the struggles that they came across and how did they solve them. Really start to be thinking about how you can improve the experiences of these students at your institution. Some of the websites I can draw your attention to that are very helpful is First Generation Student, Foster Care to Success, which also has scholarship information, and of course Fostering Success Michigan, which is our host today, which have a fabulous, phenomenal program at their university to really create these resources and to help students in their institution write their success stories. This is my contact information for those of you who'd like to get in touch with me. And before I close, I do want to again say thank you very much to all of our members on SC United Youth Voice and to our goal members and to our mentor for just really being the impetus for change and be willing to speak up and share your stories and be vulnerable to help other young adults write their success stories. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monique. Everything you presented was absolutely brilliant, and your use of student voice throughout this, I think, just really landed all of the great points that you made. And I just want to say a huge thank you to all of the students that you have worked with to gather this information, and thank you to them for allowing you to share their voices with all of us so that we can better understand how we can serve our students. So I want to open this time up now to all of our participants who are out there listening, anybody that may have questions for Monique. Great information, and I know we have folks on this webinar from actually all across the country. So if this work is happening in your state, at your institution, and you're interested in sharing, that would be great. If you're at an institution or a community organization and you're interested in how you can be a part of getting this work started, please let us know and send your questions in through the question feature. To get us started, there was so many little nuggets that I could have starred on my notes here. And one of the things I really heard is a lot of you talking about the importance, or sharing actually the students' words, but the importance of really partnering with students rather than doing for students. And I just wondered if you, in your discussions with students, have seen that come out in any way that you can help kind of demonstrate this is really the importance, or this is really what it looks like to partner with rather than do for students.
Sure, I can speak to that. I think, the difference is a lot of the times, when we speak to our youth and young adults and they've been in the foster care system, people have been doing things for them. And they're not going to learn if you do it for them. That's just, that's enabling. And so a lot of the times what it demonstrates to a young adult, if you are able to say, I'm here to support you, what you're basically saying is that I fully see you as a competent individual who can do this for yourself. Tell me what your needs are. Don't assume that you know what the student's needs are, because by doing that, that can be problematic. And you could also be undermining their abilities. So really let them to step up, take control of their future, write their success stories, and be kind of like, not necessarily the editor, but kind of help to review it and provide feedback to them, but don't write it for them.
Great. That's actually a fantastic sort of summary of something that we talk about often, and I think you just said it so beautifully and succinctly, so thank you for that. I also had a question, because it sounds like you've worked with two groups that are really doing a lot of leadership in your state, and I just wondered how you have been able to bring these students together, helping them to inform decisions, your work, and also just acknowledging that they are students, and many of them, I'm sure, are working or have commitments to family or other supportive folks. How do you bring these student leaders together in a way that also supports their other commitments?
It's a good question. So my responsibility here in the state is, as I mentioned, the research study about the experiences and outcomes of youth as they transition out of the foster care system. So our advisory boards really do focus on either the research, the outcomes of the research, and being disseminators of that data, and the others, the goal really focuses on what's existing in the system. So a lot of policies and programs like case manager support and more effective communication or transition plans. What we don't have enough is focusing on that post-secondary education piece, I think, on our advisory board level, just because they have different deliverables right now. But we're hoping that this webinar is one of the mechanisms to do it. So this is their way of not necessarily being at a conference, because we go to the South Carolina Foster Parent Association and our Palmetto Association for Children and Families and do presentations, but this is just another vehicle. And what we've done is we've actually invited a number of post-secondary institutions here in South Carolina. We sent an invite and asked them to really sit in on this webinar, because what I see is that, yes, our advisory boards can be the impetus, but ultimately our program officers and our institutions from within need to see a need for this and build and work as partnerships, because our students cannot do it on their own.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I really love how you are really describing the need for such a diverse network of support, that students are actually a part of that network. And we have our educators. Your slide that mentioned that a student who is currently in college still connects with their high school administrator really just demonstrates that our students need these long-term connections to really help them to be successful, not just in getting to college, but really getting through and into careers. So I think that that's just a great way for us to kind of frame how really this is a collective work, and obviously with the work that we're doing in South Michigan, really use that collective impact framework. But the way that you're describing that, I think, perfectly illustrates the need for the diversity in our support system. Okay, so let's see. One question that we had here was about you highlighted the need for housing during break and summer, and this is something that we've done a lot of work around. Michigan Radio here did an NPR organization here did a story called Home for the Holidays, and we see this as an issue, and this question is actually thoughts and ideas about how colleges can make this possible, to make this housing during break and the summer holiday possible.
Can you, I'm sorry, Maddie, do you mind repeating that? I was having a little bit of a difficult time hearing you. Was the question, let me just ask if this was the question, that how can post-secondary educational institutions make it possible for summer housing? Was that the question?
Yep. Yep, that's the question.
Well, here's my answer. They're the experts on that, not me. So I would hope that they would look at their programming and say, what can we do to remedy this situation? So the housing is there, the facilities are there. What can they do? Maybe they'd have to hire additional staff through the summer to see if there's any staff that would be willing to do that. I don't think it's a lack of resources. It's just really the drive. How badly do you want to help these students? And what are you willing to do to make it happen?
Great, thank you. Another question here is, you've mentioned sort of this idea of planning for completion, planning for the graduation, and then you had transition coordinators, or maybe it's transition coaches on your slide as one of the strategies. So in South Carolina, do you have people who help students to transition out of college and into careers when they're getting ready to graduate?
We don't have a formal mechanism. We certainly do have mentorships and different mentoring programs in the state that is available to assist with that transition, but formally, no. And what I would ideally like to see, and I imagine it's where you are at, is, you know, every post-secondary education institution, and I've seen this in other states, where a student, you know, like a social work student or someone who has had experience in the system will volunteer or get paid to be that transitional support for students as they come into post-secondary institutes. So no, we don't have anything formal as of now, but in my perfect world, I would love to see it happen a lot more here in South Carolina, and more mechanisms, active and direct and intentional mechanisms, to ensure that our young adults have that level of support.
Yeah, I can definitely say here in Michigan, the growth of our campus-based support programs, specifically for students who've experienced foster care, has been huge, and yet, you know, many of our institutions, 2 and 4 year, don't have that designated support staff. And we know that having that designated campus coach, coordinator, that designated champion is so important. I think it's really a good thought for everyone engaged in this work to consider how we continue that coaching, not just getting them into college and staying in college, but really that last piece, that completing college and successfully on their way to whatever that next step is going to be. And I think that, especially this time of year where we celebrate so many graduations, you know, we're hopeful that all of those students are going into exciting careers or graduate school opportunities, but it's so important to make sure that you know, professionals and supportive adults are along the way helping them plan for them. So I think it's very, very grateful. I will welcome any last questions here as we get toward the end of our time. And I don't know, Monique, if you had, you know, any last thoughts for us. I think for me, this has just been incredible. I really can't tell you enough how much we appreciate the voices that you shared, the work you've shared, and really, you know, Tracy and Josh, their work as leaders in South Carolina is absolutely putting forward. So huge kudos to them for all of that work. So any last thoughts from you?
Yeah, I'd just like to say one thing to those folks in, you know, South Carolina or other states that aren't doing this right now. It's really important to consider as you plan to create these programs. These programs aren't only going to benefit youth with foster care experience. They could benefit other students who are in predicaments where their families aren't available to support them. It can be helpful to international students as well. So when you're thinking about your programming, think big. Think about the fact that it's just not this small little population of students that you're helping. You can help a diverse array. And the other thing I would say is be very careful when you announce your programs, because if you were to develop a program and said, hey, youth in foster care, here's a program, I never ever would have contacted the person. But if you had said, hey, we offer summer residency, here's different things that we offer, without me having to divulge why I need it, then I might be much more inclined to reach out and say, hey, I'd really like to take you up on that program. Could you tell me a bit more about it? No one should have to self-disclose that they've been in foster care or that they come from, you know, a disadvantaged background. So create the programs holistically and think about just providing the resources available to your students without having to pinpoint who those students need to be. I think that would be something I'd like to add.
I love it, Monique. I just love your enthusiasm. I so appreciate you as a professional, as a colleague, sharing both from your personal and professional insights. We're getting lots of comments about how much people have enjoyed this webinar, how informative it is. I know for me, this is going to be a webinar that once it is posted up on our website at fosteringsuccessmichigan.com. We will absolutely continue to send this around to our partners, and I'm thinking that this would just be a wonderful webinar to actually make a part of a toolkit. So for any of those folks who are interested in working to support our students who have experienced foster care on their college campus, 2-year, 4-year, our students need you. They need you to be their champions. And I would love to make this webinar a part of a toolkit because I just think that what you have shared is exactly what folks need to hear and understand. So thank you so much. Again, thank you to our students. Thank you to everyone who is out there who has listened today. And we look forward to seeing you in the fall with our webinars. Once again, fosteringsuccessmichigan.com for the recording and any handout. Take care.